Welcome back to the Kyle Olson Show. So there are 31 congressional districts in America held by Democrats that Donald Trump won in 2016. Republicans need a net gain of 20 seats to win back the majority in the U.S. House. We'll be talking to a candidate who intends to win back one of those districts in a bit, but first I'm joined by Matt Boyle, Washington political editor for Breitbart News. So Matt, for some time, Republicans seem confident about at least having a shot at taking back the majority, but how do things stand now?
Yeah, look, for Republicans to retake the House of Representatives, they need to flip a net 17 seats from Democrat control back into Republican hands. And there are 30 districts across the country right now that are currently held by Democrats that are seats that President Trump won in 2016. 13 of those districts, President Trump won by 6% or more. There are really solid candidates emerging as we're kind of ending the primary season. There's still a few states left to go out there across the country, and we're entering general election season. So the Republicans feel very confident as they look at their candidate field across the country, whether it be Yvette Herrell down in New Mexico's 2nd Congressional District, Burgess Owens in Utah's 4th Congressional District, Jim Bognett in Pennsylvania's 8th, Sean Parnell out in Pennsylvania 17th in the western part of the state, who's running against Connor Lamb there. So there's a really solid crop of Republican candidates emerging around the country. The Democrats have more money though, so the Democrats are going to have the Republicans outgunned. The question is, how well does President Trump do at the top of the ticket? And then if Republicans if the Republicans are able to ride a Trump wave again, so if the president is able to perform at or near where he did in 2016, then the Republicans feel confident with these solid candidates that have emerged from the primaries, that they would be able to flip the necessary at least 17 seats back into Republican hands. In addition to those 30 districts out there that Democrats control that Trump won, there's another 20 or so that Republicans believe are competitive. So I've spoken with the NRCC chairman as well as with Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy multiple times about this over the course of the past year, and they're targeting as many as 50-something districts out there across the country that they believe are competitive. There's for instance, one in Oregon that has been long held by Democrats, but President Trump came within 0.1% of beating Hillary Clinton there. There's another one down in Texas that's a district that Hillary Clinton won in 2016 that Republicans feel they can flip back. So if they're able to win some of those seats, as well as a good number of the seats that Democrats control that Trump won those districts in 2016, then there's a really good chance that the Republicans can retake the House majority in November. The vast majority of the establishment media is missing this story. They're not covering this at all. And again, a lot of this depends on how the president does at the top of the ticket.
So in a lot of these districts, and you know, Tip O'Neill said all politics is local, and I think that it is. But how, as you're surveying these various districts and you're talking to candidates in the NRCC and all of that, how much do you think these races will come down to a referendum on President Trump?
I think that'll be part of it. So again, it depends on if the president hits his marks from 2016. So though there's definitely a local component to each of these races. So in the Pennsylvania districts, for instance, there's a lot of angst with Governor Wolf with regard to how he handled the lockdowns. With the Michigan districts, where you guys are, there's a lot of angst with how Governor Whitmer has handled herself throughout the pandemic. In New Mexico, there's a lot of different other local issues. There's, immigration's a big deal there. There's also, again, a lot of pandemic politics going on in different places. In Utah, there's other local factors, but at the same time, there's a definite national referendum element going on here. And again, It's hard to see people split ticket vote. They do that on occasion, but at the same time, it's very likely that if President Trump wins these districts, just like he did in 2016, that the Republican candidates down ticket are also going to benefit from that. So usually the presidential candidate has coattails, right? Like, so people will vote right down the ticket. So if they vote for Trump, Republican, then they're going to vote for the Republican in the Senate race. They're going to vote for the Republican in the House races. Maybe not as high a numbers as they would at the presidential level, but usually enough that it's going to make a difference, especially those districts that President Trump won by 6% or more. So while each of these races is all individual in nature, there's also a national referendum component going on here. And so it does appear, and by the way, we're starting to see polling roll in from a lot of these different districts out there across the country. So whether they be internal or independent polls from either the Republicans or the Democrats in terms of internals that are showing a very close race for the House. So New Mexico's second, which I've mentioned a few times, that one has, we've seen polling that shows it tied. We've seen polling from Utah's fourth, where that one shows it, the Republican Burgess Owens, who's a fantastic black conservative, he's up 8 points on the Democrat challenger.
So as you're talking, I'm just sort of doing the math here. So you said the NRCC is playing in 50 districts, which basically means they're investing time and money. The Republicans need 20, right, to take the majority, and 17 of those districts, Donald Trump won by at least 6 points in 2016. I mean, you look at this math, and it just seems to me if they stick to the facts and they stick to the issues, and you turn out the vote, Republicans stand a very good chance of taking back the majority in the House.
Very, very good chance. And again, a lot of it depends on what the president does at the top of the ticket. And the polling is starting to show these very close races around the country. And so if these Republicans just stick to the program, right, like, and then again, the president delivers at the top of the ticket. And that's the big question, right, is so, you see the presidential race is very much in flux right now. You look at all the polls from battleground states, they're kind of all over the place. The national polls are all over the place. There was a point where Biden seemed to be way up in the presidential race at the national level, but that seems to have really tightened in recent weeks. And so just how the president does is going to really determine how the Republicans do down ticket. They are joined at the hip. They are married. Their outcomes are connected. And so, and the same thing goes for Senate races too, in a little bit slightly different way. But as for the House races, it is very much incumbent upon what happens with the president.
Do you see an enthusiasm gap between the Republicans and the Democrats? I know that you were recently in Pennsylvania with the vice president, and you made some observations to that effect. Matt Boyle, Washington political editor for Breitbart News, thanks for joining me today.
All right, thanks, Kyle.
This is the Kyle Olson Show. We'll be right back with Eric Asaki, a Republican candidate in the 11th Congressional District.